In this video, I want to continue analyzing the article that I was reviewing last time, where I spoke about one of the theories of consciousness, one called quote-unquote biocentrism by Robert Lanza, which speculates that maybe at the moment of death, our soul, our consciousness, which is not in our body but everywhere around, goes into a different universe and it ties into the multiverse and the holographic theories and so on and so forth. And we're starting to look into these what once were thought as fringe theories, and the main thing that I want to highlight and why I'm doing these videos is to note that these people are experts in the medical fields. They know what they're talking about. They are coming with these conclusions which are a little bit far-fetched, but when you look into them, they can make a lot of sense. So the reason I thought I could put both theories from this article into one video, but the reason why I decided to make this second video, or this different video, is because this ORCH OR theory, Orchestrated Objective Reduction by Penrose and Hameroff, seems to be one of the best theories of consciousness out there. And I want to give a little bit of an introduction to it, because I'm going to be going into this theory in the future, but it has a lot of very specific terms and concepts that even for myself are a little bit challenging, and all I can offer right now is an introduction to it. But if this theory proves to be correct, it would tie a lot of the loose ends that we have in these theories of consciousness, specifically because what the main objective that they're trying to prove is that there is quantum information within the cells of our brain, and this is how we create our personal consciousness. But their idea is that consciousness, very much like Robert Lanza's biocentrism, exists outside, and as I've been saying, this goes hand in hand with the stacking data, the reports, the reports on altered states of consciousness, ancient philosophies, and so on and so forth. All of the content that I've been making in this channel. So if they manage to prove this, it would be a huge leap into our understanding on consciousness. Before I move forward, I would like to remind you that if you want to join the growing discussion on consciousness and would like to be notified on the latest scientific discoveries and theories surrounding this topic and how they connect to ancient mythologies and philosophies, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as I'll try to upload at least one video per week as I continue with the outline. Alright, so as I mentioned, there's a lot of speculation in this theory from Robert Lanza, one of the 100 most influential people and top 50 thinkers, current thinkers of the world, according to mainstream media. The whole idea of the multiverse, the whole idea that the soul goes on, and so on and so forth, consciousness, whatsoever. But the reason why I wanted to make this video is because this next bit, just adding to the whole idea of this quantum consciousness. And now this is what really matters. This is what I'm really interested about this article, about these theories. So we're gonna assume with the previous ideas that there is this other universes or multiplicity of worlds. Perhaps, as I mentioned, we live in some sort of a hologram. Reality is not that real. It's simply our perception in our consciousness, and consciousness is not our brain. Consciousness is, let's think of it as a matrix, as a unified field, as information and data which manifests into the physical world through the magic of reality, we're gonna call it, or the Bill of Maya, as some of the Eastern ideas would hold it. So there's this abundance of places or other universes where our soul could migrate after death, according to the theory of neo-biocentrism. But does the soul exist? So there's all these universes, but what about the soul? What about the consciousness? What about the individual consciousness also? What's the deal with that? Do we have any information Well, Professor Stuart Hameroff from the University of Arizona has no doubt about the existence of an eternal soul. He believes that consciousness does not perish after death. Now, the Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose, they have this theory, the Orchestrated Objective Reduction. I mentioned this in the past, and I mentioned it in some of my recent videos, talking about this quote-unquote fringe theory of consciousness, which has been having some other scientists looking closer into it and coming with some interesting experiments that I'm going to be going into in the future. So according to Hameroff, the human brain is a perfect quantum computer, and the soul or consciousness is simply information stored at the quantum level. So this is what seems to be going on. The idea that the brain is some sort of a computer, some sort of a filter, but it's not the seat of consciousness. It can be transferred following the death of the body. Quantum information carried by consciousness merges with our universe and exists infinitely. In his turn, Lanza claims that the soul migrates to another universe. That is the main difference his theory has from all the similar ones. So Robert Lanza, he's got this biocentrism theorem. I don't know what he's basing himself off, but Stuart Hameroff is an anesthesiologist. He's an expert on putting people out of consciousness, of shutting down consciousness. Roger Penrose is a scientist focused on quantum physics and the quantum world. And now what I speak about in this channel is this altered states of consciousness, the research of consciousness based on the reports, based on the experiments, and what the stacking data is suggesting, what all of these reports are talking about when people go into near-death experiences, where people go into psychedelics, is that they go outside of their own ego. They see their bodies, they barely recognize their bodies. They ask themselves as a consciousness, who is that person lying there? Oh, I think that's me, or that's who I used to be. They speak about shedding the body like an old piece of clothing and becoming a newer consciousness. So this idea from Stuart Hameroff that this quantum information simply leaves the body, leaves the brain, and merges with our universe is consistent with data from altered states of consciousness, near-death experience, as I mentioned in that recent consensus statement for the future research on near-death experiences, which was postulated quite recently. I made a video about it. I'm going to post it somewhere on the screen, or you can find below. It's hundreds of millions of people are coming with the same story. This idea that they encounter beings, that they went outside their body and then they traveled to a different place, and they were explained all the mysteries in life, and they were told that we are not our bodies, and there's some sort of purpose to all of this, and everything is going to be okay, and so on and so forth. I've spoken about that multiple times. But now what we're looking at here is this whole idea that consciousness merges with our universe. Our individual consciousness merges with the whole consciousness. People who go through this experience, they see all these other souls. They see this sea of souls, and all of them are like bright lights or orbs going somewhere. And there's a multitude of ways in which people experience different things that happen in this process of that, in these recall death experiences or near death experiences. Sir Roger Penrose, a well-known British physicist and expert in mathematics from Oxford, as I said, the Penrose-Hameroff theory, ORCH OR theory, supports the multiverse theory as well. Together, scientists are developing a quantum theory to explain the phenomenon of consciousness. As I mentioned, there's also Tom Campbell with his theory on everything, and now we have Robert Lanza, one of the top 50 most influential thinkers. There's Roger Penrose and Hameroff. These are scientists. These are not people who are New Age. These are not people, not to take anything from the people who are speaking about all these things a bit more freely and based to their personal experiences through psychedelics or actual personal vivid near-death experience or altered state of consciousness. But these are people who are experts in their fields, and they have a good idea of what they're talking about, and they're all coming with the same ideas. So they believe that they have found carriers of consciousness, the elements that accumulate information during life and drain It's interesting, the words that I use here. And drain consciousness somewhere else after that. As I said, this is an expert in quantum physics, an anesthesiologist, NASA physicists, so on and so forth. This whole idea, now in literature, we have the whole idea, I mentioned it in my previous videos, the whole idea of the Akashic records, this place, this basic database of all the memories in the world. We don't know where our memories are. So they, in the previous video that I made, I talked about the first scan, the first EEG of a person going through the process of death and what it revealed, and I went through some of the counter arguments to the theory, the idea that some of the skeptics are going with the idea that near-death experiences are just simply the experience of the last beats, the last processes of a dying brain, because they found out that the brain becomes very active at the time of death, and you have all of these brain waves going back and forward. So they are thinking there's some sort of memory recollection going on through that process, and this is why people see their lives flash before their eyes. But as I mentioned, there's so much more to the phenomenon which is not explained. The fact that they see these memories through the eyes of others, where in their brain where they store the perception of others, and not only that, what happened after their events. Why would the brain care about their actions and how they affected other people? Why do they meet autonomous beings? Why does the same happen, this activation of the brain in psychedelics, but people don't see a live review? People don't have any memory recollection. Instead, what they have happened to them when they are in these states and when the brain is acting up like this is that they go to different realms of reality and they meet autonomous beings who tell them the secrets of the universe. This is not memory recollection. So where do you fit all of these different pieces? Now we have this theory that there is this somewhere else after that. There is this, perhaps this database, perhaps this somewhere else, which we don't know right now. We don't understand. So these elements are located inside protein-based microtubules, neuronal microtubules, which previously have been attributed to a simple role of reinforcement and transport channeling inside a living cell. Based on their structure, microtubules are best suited to function as carriers of quantum properties inside the brain. As I mentioned, what these theories are pointing at is this idea of a quantum consciousness, that the realm of quantum actually is where consciousness resides, and the world of quantum is everything around us, inside of us, outside of us, and beyond. Is what the ancient beliefs and scriptures defined as divinity, defined as any sort of basic conception of a god, of the all-encompassing energy or source all throughout the world, this basic intelligent design behind everything. But now what they're doing is that they are proving and they are looking into where could these all be. Now, as I said, this is quite a complex theory, and there's a lot of very specific field concepts and terms that I personally do not fully understand, but they are going into it. And I watch a lot of videos and I read a lot of the papers from Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose, and how they are doing counter arguments against their skeptics and the criticism that the theory has, because the theory has a lot of criticism, of course. This would be unprecedented. This would be understanding the soul and understanding death. If they manage to accomplish what they are theorizing, and if they manage to prove it, this would be unprecedented. This would be the biggest discovery in human history. So now, as I mentioned, this is the whole idea that there is a quantum consciousness. In one of my recent videos, I mentioned that I was going to address this. I'm going to do it briefly, but I'm going to do a future video about this in the future. So I was speaking about how mammals dream about the world before they come into Earth, into the world. and how perhaps there's this pre-mortal consciousness that goes back and forward and then incarnates even through these animals, so on and so forth. And they have, since everything is connected, since everything is quantum information, they have access to the information of the world, just like we have access in dreams to different worlds. Sometimes in my personal dreams, I haven't seen places, and then somehow in my dreams I see these places. How did I come up with it? How did I come up with the structure? How did I come up with the people? How did I come up with the feelings that I experienced there? So there's this idea that there is this quantum unified field of quantum consciousness, and that we all have access to it. We are it. We are in it, and we are it. So while I was reading in social media, sometimes I don't have the opportunity to reply to all of the comments and all of the things that people mention me in different social media. But the one consistent counter argument that I saw, which is a very interesting one, is the whole idea that information comes from the mother through DNA, and now we start going into epigenetics. So the argument was that perhaps this information of the world was passed on to the new infants, to the babies while they were in the womb, through their mothers, because the mothers were in the world, of course, and the fathers. The information is passed on. As I said, this would imply that the information of the world would live within the cells, within the DNA of the beings, of the parents of the mammal. Now, if this assumption, if this counter argument would be correct, it wouldn't deny the idea of a unified quantum field of consciousness. It would simply explain exactly how it happens. Because the information is in the cells, the information is in the DNA, the information is in the quantum. This is why it's a quantum field of consciousness. And this is what these scientists are explaining in this theory. They are finding exactly where in the brain this information, this quantum information from our life, the information that we accumulate during our life, is drained then into the expanded consciousness, into the the quantum world. So in that specific video that I made, it wouldn't matter if the information comes from epigenetics, from the parents going to the mammal. It would be the same. It would only explain exactly how they acquire this information that is in the parents' cells, and perhaps everywhere around, all around. Now, the idea and the counter argument is that this quantum information is not, because it is quantum information, the idea of epigenetics, that the idea of the world and the experiences of the world and the mental images from the mother in the world, the perception of whatever mammal it is. Let's talk about mice. If there's a female mice that is going to have a baby, she went throughout the world, and she went around a field, for example, and now the baby has the idea of a field. Well, this is that her conception in the brain, she saw the information of the world and she captured it in the brain, and this quantum information goes into the baby. The idea is that there is not this connection with the world outside, but rather it's just a linear connection from whatever information she captured in her brain into the baby. However, the actual theory from Professor Hameroff is not about epigenetics just on their own. It's about draining this whole information into the whole, into somewhere else, which is consistent with the reports, as I mentioned, from Orchestrated Consciousness. So it is very likely that it's not simply the information within the genes of what was captured within the brain of the parents of the mammal, but it's all around, it's all encompassing, it's all over the place. Now, as I mentioned, there's a lot of nuances to this. I'm going to be talking about epigenetics and these theories that perhaps we can modify our DNA through thoughts, because at the end of the day, thoughts is the base for consciousness, and if everything is consciousness, then through our thoughts we can change the script of reality itself, which is what some of the New Age theories suggest as well. So that is mainly because they are able to retain quantum states for a long time, meaning they can function as elements of quantum computer. This is the cells, the microtubules that they're talking about here. So yes, the brain is a quantum computer. All the information throughout our lives is captured. And then when it comes to the time of death, as I mentioned in that previous video, which I'm going to be linking the screen somewhere, or I already linked it, or it's going to be below, it mentions that at the time of death, there is this surge of activity in the brain. There's all this memory recollection, and this, you have to think about the intelligent design. Why does this even happen in the first place? So all the information during life goes through at the same time. There is this live review, and then at the moment of death, when there is no more brainwaves going through, because this is the argument, this is the counter argument to that video, was that, oh, then if the brain is being activated, then that's it, it's just the activity of the brain. No, after that, and after there is no more brain oscillations, there's no more brain, then all that information is actually drained into the consciousness at large. That is the assumption from these newer theories of quantum consciousness. What do you think about biocentrism? Does this theory seem feasible to you? Biocentrism from Robert Lanza, not so much in my opinion. It's an interesting idea to deal with, the whole idea of the multiverse, and he kind of gets the basics of it. But now the ORCH OR theory, the Orchestrated Objective Reduction from Penrose and Hameroff, is consistent with all of the other research that is coming out from this from different fields of consciousness, along with the data, with the reports from people experiencing through psychedelics and through near-death experiences and so on and so forth. Everything is consistent with this ORCH OR, Orchestrated Objective Reduction, which I'm going to be talking about in this channel in the future. If you're on the path of finding the truth about reality and our purpose as humans on Earth, the information that I have to share concerns you. After a lifetime of research in philosophies ranging from Buddhism to the occult, I've encountered themes and patterns along some baffling information that is beginning to be seriously studied by science. A Rational Divine Outline, The Ghost of Jesus, is the first iteration of this project, where I analyze the message of Jesus without dogmatism, fanaticism, or religious bias. You can find my work available on Amazon on the link below. If you find this work valuable, consider subscribing, sharing, and following me on social media, as it will help others in the same path to find this information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.